Hello, welcome to today's broadcast. Hopefully it'll be brief. I'm more just touching base with those of my regular viewers who might rely on me being a familiar and ever-present person talking about American politics and the dynamics at play over the last few decades, culminating in the present moment. Morning, Kath. So it's interesting. I was last propounding the idea that American journalism might suffer too heavily from an ideal that politics is always about comity, moving towards civil pro-social discourse, and they want to shape events to fit within that narrative, that there's no bad faith acting, just different points of view and everybody just trying to get different points across, because that's the ideal and that's their journalistic ideal, and they will become enmeshed in the minutiae of inside access journalism, where, surely your understanding is better the more you get insider details from people right on the scene. Whereas people right up on the scene, like Ted Cruz's staffers, are sometimes very surprised by how Ted Cruz acts, because they're too enmeshed in their surroundings. They're too invested in their own idealism and tribalism about Ted Cruz and what he is and what he does. Whereas people standing further back who might not be in Washington are better able to get a full measure of Ted Cruz as a man and what his likely motivations and what his likely next steps are. Hello, Jeff. General Honore to the rescue again. So I understand that he was appointed to help out with the rescue efforts in New Orleans. Help me with the pronunciation. I've just read the word, I haven't seen it. But Hurricane Katrina. And it was botched originally by a friend of George Bush's who was appointed to lead the rescue efforts, but who was actually a dog groomer or associated with owning a dog grooming business, I think, and who kind of gave up before he started on providing an adequate effort. So, yes, Kath is of the opinion that Trump may have compromising material or dirt on Ted Cruz and Jim Jordan, amongst others. Possibly, and there's the possibility as well that they are just shameless opportunists who have taken advantage of the fact that Russia was keen to help Trump. Billionaires such as the Koch brothers were keen to help Trump. There was a lot of oligarchic interests as well as adversarial foreign interests interested in paying some money towards the president for sale in order to own a piece of that action. Oh, Bob has some sad news. His brother died last night from COVID, which happened because he was a Trump believer, and that's really sad, and I'm so sorry that happened, Bob. And I know when people close to you or people who've been in your very close social circle at some point die, it's a real reminder of one's own mortality, I think, and it can be very confronting, as well as a loss of hope. Even if you didn't have a wonderful relationship with your brother, once they die, that door is closed to improving that relationship in a way that you can make memories around, in a way that you can. Anyway, I'm really sorry. And I'm really sorry for all of the people who have died after following Trump's medical advice to disdain mask wearing, to fail to take the pandemic seriously, to treat it as if it was a hoax by Trump's political opponents, rather than the very serious international crisis that it was and continues to be. Also, Scott Atlas, Trump's media advisor, who he appointed to the position after seeing him make lots of appearances on Fox News, uttering things that supported Trump's fervent desire to present himself as the holder of the keys to a reality in which COVID wasn't really a problem. Trump presented himself as someone who wouldn't do lockdowns, who would just make COVID go away just by saying so. Bob's brother was in hospital for 45 days or so, which is a long time to be hospitalized and potentially resulting in substantial medical bills for his family as well. I'm so sorry. So the last time I was broadcasting, I was reading through a thread from a anti-racism educator called Tim Wise, who's written a book called Dispatches from the Race War. And when I was last reading from his thread, he was talking about in his early 20s, he was involved with a campaign to oppose David Duke running for office. And even though David Duke did not succeed in obtaining elected office, he was able to demonstrate that he could provide a more polished veneer to the Ku Klux Klan and to naked racism. So Tim understood that Dukeism was cocaine politics, addictive, deadly, and easily transported across state lines, but people didn't want to believe it. They wanted to think that maybe that was just isolated to Louisiana and the South. And then there were the white leftists who said we shouldn't focus on Duke's fascism or Nazism, because apparently that was no better than red baiting by the right against the left. We should just focus on his mainstream conservative appeals. He was no worse than Reagan, they said. Oh, I've just realized I haven't talked that much about Ben Sasse yet, and my title does promise that I will. So what I might do is share a little bit of that Atlantic article and what it's about, because that is Ben Sasse trying to rehabilitate the Republican Party, and I think is illustrative of their understanding that, yes, corporate donations are likely to continue to dry up because the news about the Capitol insurrection is just going to get worse as we learn more and we learn about who helped the rioters and the insurrectionists, and who helped them know where the parliamentarian's office was, etc., and how close we came to losing the lives of legislators and having Mike Pence potentially taken hostage and told at gunpoint to overrule the Constitution and just certify Trump as the victor of the 2020 election. So this is Ben Sasse's article, and it's a good illustration highlighting that the Republican Party elephant is drowning in QAnon conspiracy thinking. So the title is QAnon is Destroying the Republican Party from Within. And it says, until last week, too many in the Republican Party thought they could preach the Constitution and wink at QAnon. They can't. And the hole I'm going to pick with what he's doing here, first of all, I'll congratulate him a tiny bit on having the will to stick his head above the parapet and denounce QAnon, which is a violent cult that seeks to overthrow the United States government and has very specific murderous intentions towards Republicans who they feel have been insufficiently loyal to Trump and insufficiently committed to the task of ensuring Trump stays in power for a second term, regardless of the election results in Joe Biden's favor. So Ben Sasse tries to give some and take some. So what he gives is an admission that the Republican Party just winked at QAnon and allowed it to prosper as a force in the Republican Party and in the minds of Republican voters. And then, secondly, he also tries to slip in some digs at the Democrats to make it a blame on both sides piece that might reassure some Republican voters that, well, yes, perhaps Republican leaders have not been useful and have potentially contributed to the armed insurrection. But, Democrats have done things as well. We've all done things. So the things that Ben Sasse accuses Democrats of, he accuses them of making bizarre, what he deems to be bizarre decisions to close churches in California but allow strip joints and pharmacies to stay open. Was it pharmacies? I'd better just check. So it's good that he does this accounting of what the insurrection involved. 2 police officers died, 4 other Americans. Pipe bombs were located at the headquarters of both the Democratic and the Republican national committees. There was a vehicle fully loaded with weaponry and homemade napalm bombs. And he describes newly elected Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene as being cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He's specific in naming that she once ranted, "There's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take this global cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles out, and I think we have the president to do it." So he's clear. Marjorie Taylor Greene has openly subscribed to a philosophy that is essentially the Jews are running the world. It's the updated version of that. Only you don't directly come out and say Jews straight away. You say Hollywood, Democrats. But it's the blood libel. And I've been talking about it for a while, but there's a burden lifted off my shoulders in that many people with bigger platforms than me are now talking about this resurgence of what is essentially centuries-old stigma that's occasionally rehashed of pointing at Jewish people embedded in various communities around the world and saying you are responsible for running a secret Christian child murdering ring. And that's what QAnon is if you dig down into it. It's the protocols of the elders of Zion all over again. And it gives people purpose. It gives people meaning. It's just crazy, murderous meaning. And they feel that they're fighting for something bigger than themselves. And the human psyche often craves that. It's almost like a Zen Buddhist desire to not be concerned anymore with whether or not your life reflects well in an egotistical sense. Have you got accomplishments you're proud of? Perhaps not. But you can join this movement to fight a terrible dark force taking over the world, a global cult of people who eat children, and so redeem any shame you have ever felt about lack of accomplishments or wrongdoing you've committed in your life and over the course of your life. So, getting back to Ben Sass's writing, he says Americans across the political spectrum are falling prey to the siren song of conspiracism. Well, he thinks he's a poet, and that is a little bit poetic. But again, somebody from the Republican Party daring to accuse people across the spectrum of being equally as subscribed to conspiracy theories, it's a bit rich. He's comparing Fox News, which is obviously very dangerous and very immersed in the laundering of conspiracy theories to a large section of the American television viewing public. And he compares that to MSNBC, CNN, and the New York Times. And they are in no way equivalent in terms of a departure from the truth in a left-wing direction, in the same way that Fox News is frequently involves a departure from truth in a extreme right-wing, anti-migrant, pro-fascist direction. Ben Sasse acknowledges that the president and his lawyers were laughed out of court more than 60 times. He's saying the loss of rootedness and institutional authority has created an opening for populists on the right and the left, because he's referring to Bernie Sanders without mentioning him by name. We are very lucky, it's true, that Joe Biden had the political instincts and the public profile to be able to run against Trump in a way that extracted fence sitters or independent voters or Republicans left uneasy by Trump's fairly naked fascism. They were able to break out of the thought box of tribal thinking and tribal identification. And they were able to vote for Joe Biden as president because he's not as intimidating as Bernie Sanders is. And I'm glad, because I'm not a fan of Bernie Sanders. His ego, I think, motivated him to contribute to the lessening of Hillary Clinton's electoral chances in 2016, because she was making claims that Russians were attacking her campaign, and his campaign staff were giving him evidence to substantiate her claim, namely that they were observing Russian-based accounts on Sanders' Facebook page, belittling Hillary Clinton, and also, more than belittling, calling her a murderer and a baby eater. Yes. All right. He says that Republicans have to do two things if his party has any hope of playing a constructive rather than destructive part in America's future. Well, I'm glad he's putting the scenario that seriously, because it's true. Is the Republican Party going to stop being so thoroughly destructive and instead try and use some of the capital of Americans, Republican voting Americans' blind loyalty? Are they going to use that for good rather than evil, to build rather than destroy? He's asking them to repudiate the nonsense that has set our party on fire. But he's also whinging that in an exchange on CNN, a host accused Republican voters of making common cause with the Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan. Dude, we saw for ourselves Republican Trump supporters wearing Camp Auschwitz t-shirts and brandishing Confederate flags in their Trump-incited storming of the Capitol. He notes that Republican Congress members in the House have said privately that they believe a vote to impeach the president would have put their lives or the lives of their families at risk, and that's why they didn't vote to impeach Donald Trump. But 10 did. 10 found their courage and thinking of investing in body armor. But yes. Yes, it's true. There has been some very malignant. Hello, darling. Oh, what's wrong, sweetie? You woke up? Why don't you go to the toilet and see if you can go back to sleep? Do you need to go to the loo, baby? It's just there, darling. Are you confused? All right, folks. Well, I think I had best go to bed. But look, I'm just wanting to help with that countdown to safety. It may or may not involve safety, but it is to be hoped that once Biden is inaugurated and Trump is more visibly defeated, that all of the QAnon were so powerful and we're just waiting for the right moment to strike and put Obama in jail and denounce everybody, that will really be conclusively disproven by Biden's inauguration, unless you're capable of being a QAnon supporter who believes that Trump will secretly face swap with Biden, so that even though it appears Biden will be in power, it will secretly be Trump. And there could very well be people capable of believing that in the Republican Party. But I think Biden's inauguration, if it proceeds safely, and I hope it does, will hopefully peel off a few more of the more rusted on adamant Trump supporters, who still seem to be quite numerous, although people are repudiating their Republican Party registration at a rate of knots. And people have been remarking on it. I can understand how there's many people who, out of force of habit, vote for Republicans out of fear that Democrats will harm their country. And then came the attack on the Capitol, and it became more evident that Trump-supporting Republicans are very prepared to do harm to the country. And that changes the calculation of who are you going to fear more? People who take zip ties and their friends and go with thousands of people to the Capitol building and then use flagpoles, crutches, bear mace, and fire extinguishers to hurt, traumatize, attack, and even kill police officers. You would like to bring a broadcaster on Periscope to my attention. Her feeds are nuts and you're concerned. Sure, are they a QAnon typey person or are they a more left person? I'm a big believer in horseshoe theory, in that both people on the far right and most of the right, and that people on the far left as well, are capable of populist style extremism. Nope, I have never seen Karen on Denver Nights Out. Has anybody else? Are you concerned that she's a danger to the Republic? Do you feel like you need to notify the FBI? Because the FBI are really making their tip lines available to people. I disagree, Pompeius Magnus. They're not as rusted on as you think. There were a lot of incentives for people to believe that Trump cared about them in the form of easy chunks of information that they were able to misinterpret. So Trump's signature on the first relief check apparently resonated with people who went, I see that signature, Trump is providing me with money. And that's their understanding of politics and how it works. They don't understand that Trump wasn't responsible for that check. He just added his name to the checks because he understands marketing. He doesn't understand how to conduct a business profitably. He typically uses money laundering to derive his profits. If he's not trading off his imaginary billionaire status to take part in a reality TV show that generates legitimate profits for his business. She's got a huge following and she's on the far right. All right. Have you reported her to Periscope? That might be something to do. I'm going to go to bed so that I can wake up early for my kids. So yes, Pompeius Magnus. I think there is a peeling away from the GOP happening now. And as you can see with the margin of victories in different swing states, 5% of people peeling off the Republican Party consistently across multiple states is a big deal for their electoral chances, both in the midterms in 2022 and another presidential election in 2024. Shedding core voters from the Republican Party who can no longer countenance the extremism embraced by a preponderance or a majority of Republicans, that can still result in decent people taking their bat and ball and votes and going home. So you've reported her to Periscope and nothing's happening. So you think if I draw attention to the issue, that might help? Well, it might. I'll look into her tomorrow. I think you said her handle was denvernightsout.com. All right. And that's her Periscope handle name? I could check her out one time. Yes. People who've been following the statistics have said disinformation's gone down. Well, you'd hope so because Twitter literally got rid of thousands upon thousands of QAnon accounts. And of course, Trump isn't there as an orchestra conductor anymore, pushing streams of disinformation on Facebook and on Twitter. And even his YouTube channel's been temporarily suspended, and the Facebook suspension is also temporary. I think Twitter's stock market share price went down by quite a substantial amount of money when they banned Trump. And that's because Donald Trump is, to a large degree, the economic engine of Twitter. So when they ban him, it's not really that much because of civic concern. It's because they don't want to get blamed for further acts of violence being organized on Twitter or Facebook when the last act of violence that Trump's followers engaged in, so little was done to prevent it. No, Boston Tea Party is one of them. He's a right-wing troll who likes to check out this broadcast. You know what? I'm happy with him listening. Maybe one day something I say would resonate with him, but I think he's more here because he derives pleasure and excitement out of trying to push disinformation on my channel. Yeah, he would be in good company. Look, I always like to leave the door open for people to change and see the light. It's just past behavior is usually a fairly accurate predictor of future behavior. But again, having said that, things change people's minds, particularly very epic events. And the storming of the Capitol was a very epic event, a very strongly intended message to legislators that QAnon Trump-supporting type folks intend to execute you if you do not bend to their bottom-up tyranny. Yes. Yes, a lot of things have crumbled for Trump in a week. The PGA golf tournament in his New Jersey resort cancelled. Corporate donors backing away from Republicans who participated in seeking to decertify the election results, and more things of that nature. So it's good. It's good to see parts of America rejecting this particular brand of American fascism. So yes, but anyway, as I said, I'm going to bed. I can tell I'm tired. I'll say good night and take care, everybody. Good nights from me to me, but good morning to you all. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope the news is relatively sedate. I hope the FBI are doing a great job of rounding up potential instigators or agents of violence. And there's a concert, isn't there, soon? A pre-Biden Harris inauguration concert, which I'm excited about and hope it goes well. Yes, thank you, Kath. Sweet dreams to me. Thank you, Jess. Lovely to see you. Take care, everybody, and hope to talk to you again soon. Bye.